This episode of the Pubcast is brought to you by the Southern African Parliamentary Support Trust.
What's up, good people? My name is aka the Keeper of the Energy, and this is the Pubcast, a podcast where we talk about all issues dealing with gender. Today on the show we've got an advocate of many things. Her name is Rumbi, Venge, a close friend of mine, and we're going to talk about gender-based violence and the girl chat. Rumbi, welcome.
Good greeting.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. As you know, we're in the 16 days of gender-based violence, right? And we're gonna talk about, what's been going on, especially in Zimbabwe over the past year. There've been like a lot of cases, like a lot of minors, being sexually abused and even getting pregnant. And I think it's only right we shed some light on this, and hopefully come up with a solution to these atrocities, So to kick it off, can you just explain from a legal point of view, what the courts mean when they say gender-based violence? Because I can go there and then they say, oh yeah, we're charging you gender-based violence, and I'm like, I don't really know, because I don't know the legalities of things. So please just explain.
It's a lot to talk about, and particularly, my heart breaks when children are having children, and when these issues don't stop, and it's a continual. I even think that people are making the headlines up, but this is where we're at. Yeah. It's a good question that you ask, because you must understand why you've been brought before a court. The police, when they arrest you, should make an effort to actually explain what you're charged with. Yeah. And then over and above that, you should get all of these things in writing. Charge sheet, you should get all of these things. You should get any statements that have been made against you are supposed to be given to you when you're charged with the crime. But broadly speaking, when you're talking about gender-based violence, this is violence that is visited upon someone because of their gender. So I'll attack you because you're a man. What tends to happen is a lot of women get attacked because they're women. It opens up to things like sexual abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, there's financial abuse, there's broadly psychological abuse as well. Yeah. But that's what you're looking at. And recently, the number of cases around sexual assault, or we're looking at sex with a minor, or broadly speaking, rape, and for the avoidance of doubt, and maybe I should even say this to the camera, any crime involving a child in a sexual connection is rape, it's abuse. Children cannot consent to sex. So an adult has come in and they've robbed this child of their innocence. They've physically also harmed them, and a lot of the time are leaving these children pregnant, sometimes with venereal diseases, sometimes with HIV and AIDS as well.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And like, in as much as we're getting a lot of cases being reported, I still have a feeling that we haven't even touched the surface of what's going on around, because remember back in the day, there was this ad where it was a family setup, and this little kid, you can tell something is wrong, right? And then the mother goes and confronts the child, what's going on? And then the kid was like, it's Uncle John. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think, like, what will be going on in this child's mind? Because, like, my innocence has been robbed from me. I'm 9 years old, and now you've teleported me to 24, and at the same time, you're an elder in my family. My father, if he's there, or my mother, look up to you with respect and reverence, and having the courage to even tell somebody, like, I don't know what advice you have for like the actual child, or even the parents of the child who are going through this, because I can only imagine this must be the most painful, disorienting experience ever, you know what I mean? So
it's okay, to start off with, I'll give you a scary statistic. When you're looking at rape that occurs in the home or domestic issues that happen, over 85% of perpetrators are people known to the victim.
someone who's very close.
Very close. Because also when you think about it, the way it's systematically done, Mana is told, don't say anything, Dopa Marema sweet, or there's actually a threat of fear, or your parents. We're still when your parents are actually being looked after or benefiting someone, something from someone.
Exactly.
And then they say, I'll cut you off, I won't pay your school fees.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So there's so many barriers stopping even the reporting. The cases we're dealing with have been reported. What about the unreported cases?
Yeah, I feel like the cases which have been reported are being reported because, we can see something has happened. So some of these children who, I'm not going to say lucky enough not to get pregnant, that will not. That's
you can't even put the two together. Like,
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what is the law of this country doing about this? Because clearly on a social level, we both agree that this is terrible. You know what I mean? Like the hardest punishment should be given to these perpetrators.
Absolutely.
You know what
Okay. Let me start from the standpoint of what the position is at the moment. Currently, and I know that we also want to focus on the boy child as well as the girl child. Only a woman or a girl can be raped by a man or a boy. The definition of rape, if you open the criminal code today, only speaks of a man raping a woman.
So if it's the other way, what is it called?
It'll be called aggravated indecent assault. It could simply just be termed aggravated assault as well. Or looking at the age of the child, it could be anything sexually inappropriate with a minor, but it's not rape.
That is ridiculous. Just give me a second.
You want that? Yeah.
Okay, all right. So can you please run us through the process? For some people who are probably going through this, but they don't know how to go through, how to go about it.
First thing is to report.
Okay.
You need to report. So breaking the silence is important. It doesn't matter that it's Uncle John. It doesn't matter that Uncle John has been paying your school fees. It doesn't matter that Uncle John has been looking after your parents. It doesn't matter that you're living in Uncle John's house. Rape is wrong.
Yes.
You should not be touched inappropriately, full stop. So you need to report. The child needs to be able to approach someone. Whether they normally say that when rape occurs, it should be reported to someone of authority or a senior person or someone of trust. So you'd be looking at, Vanamai, you're the mother, or maybe if it's at school, it's a teacher, or within the family setup, your tetes who are supposed to be there as the sentry point to see what's happening within the families. We need to talk about these things to make it plain. And that's why people get it wrong, because they don't want to talk about it. It's a deep, dark, ugly secret, and that's the problem.
Yes.
When you expose it, that's the first step. So report, you go to the police station. The police station will offer you a victim-friendly unit where they will actually offer you sensitive support. There's a joke going around, and I've seen it on social media, where someone is trying to report a case of domestic violence, but it's a man who's been beaten up by his wife. And they actually start making fun of it in the police station, and it's not dealt with the sensitivity that it requires. So the victim-friendly unit are trained to be sensitive. Okay. And again, remember that 85% statistic. You're dealing with people who know each other. Yeah. You're looking at your brother who's raped your daughter.
Yeah.
You're looking at your nephew who's raped your daughter, or vice versa. Or you're looking at your husband who supposedly has raped your daughter. So because of that proximity, it's also very important to be tactful and sensitive, and also to provide counseling all around. Because we tend to just want to end up Jerry. But what about counseling? What about the psychological aspects around that?
All right, so I go to the victim-friendly unit, right? VFU.
That's correct.
Right? Yeah. Then what happens from there? What does the VFU do?
The VFU will take statements from you. If you've got someone in mind, let's make this very real. Just for purposes of this program only, I'm going to say that
I do not practice this kind of thing, but go ahead.
Okay, so we say Fizzo's the accused person, or I was Fizzo's the person I'm suspecting. I say go to police station. I think that Fizzo has done A, B, C, D. Manano Torwa, then medical examinations need to be done.
Okay.
Because a medical affidavit will show that there has been, there's been
violation.
Contact, there's been violation, there's been physical harm suffered.
Yes.
Statements, again, are taken, and then an arrest is made. they go and we come and we lift you up from wherever you are.
Okay, so an arrest will be made upon confirmation of the medical report.
Yes.
Okay.
It's important. Sometimes, depending on the circumstances, I don't want people to stop and not go and report because they're saying we're waiting for the medical affidavit. Whenever you allege rape, that needs to be attached as part of the docket. So you go to a state-owned hospital, or if you are going to pay for it on your own. A lot of the time, many people in this situation are mariage, so they would have to go to a state-owned hospital. If you're in Harare, you're going to Harare Hospital, you're going to Harenyatwa. They will require a police report that you then hand over so that they can perform the examinations and then give you a medical affidavit that will then be attached to the papers.
Okay. Then from there, an arrest is made and then the court date is set.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm checking out this whole process. I see there's a lot of accountability because there have been some situations where someone will accuse someone of rape and then after a couple of days or weeks, take it back and say, no, got the wrong person and everything. So in the event that that happens, right, because we're trying to protect both sides, right? Because sex can be used as a weapon, right? So in that case, there is an accountability. What will happen then if then, say, this young lady then says, no, it's the wrong person? What then happens to this guy who's already been falsely accused and already run through the system?
Unfortunately, this is happening quite a lot. There's a few cases that have actually resulted in the accused person or the person who's had these false allegations made against them taking their own life. Within the law, the law is, it's almost like there's checks and measures in there that I believe are adequate. People just need to know what to use and how to move around all these aspects. If you make a false police report, you can actually be arrested for that. And there's a penalty for that. So you actually come into court, be arrested for that, possibly pay level 5 fine, or go to jail for a period between 6 months and a year.
Okay.
If you make a false allegation, or if you make a false claim on oath, now that's already a different sphere, because when you make an oath and you take an oath, you are saying that I am stating facts that are true, a hand on the heart. If you're going to be giving evidence, and you give evidence on oath. If you lie, that's perjury. Again, it's another crime, and it's set up with penalties that are there that can then be used. If I cause your arrest and then I take it back, there's a very unfortunate, or shall I call unfortunate now, because it came to light. He was sentenced to 18 years for raping a minor. The minor 8 years later said, I was forced to lie. And he has spent all this time in jail. So in that case, you can claim damages for wrongful prosecution, for wrongful arrest. But this happens many years later. You've lost the time. You've lost your standing within the community. Whether you can actually get a remedy for that legally, no, not really. But the law will try and give you some sort of recourse. You can claim damages. You can claim, maybe $100,000, $1 million. But does it put you back in the same place? No, it really doesn't. Once the die is cast, it's cast, unfortunately. So people shouldn't make these allegations lightly. Very recently, I also heard that another young girl said she was raped by her father. And then under cross-examination in court, you've been dragged before the court. The trial has actually begun. Only under cross-examination did the girl crack and then say, no, actually, my mom forced me to lie to fix my dad. Crazy.
That is ridiculous. But that's another form of abuse, right?
Absolutely. It is.
All right, you mentioned something about, let's say Uncle John is taking care of paying my school fees and taking care of my parents. We live in Zimbabwe, things are tough, obviously, you know what I mean? And it pains me how people are now, in a way, selling their children. They know what's happening is wrong, but for the fact that I don't have to pay for that and I'm being taken care of, maybe I've got a nice car, I'm just gonna look to the side. There's that one thing which I'm like, okay, this is the reason why it's being fueled, right? And then there's this other thing which I learned of recently. There are actually some people who actually think that it's a ritual to sleep with a minor so that they can come up financially.
What kind of money is that? You know, are you going to be happy to spend that sort of money? But it's happening quite a lot, and there have been proposals that have been put forward to say, when we arrest someone like that, let's also go after the nganga or
Right.
you know, this the prophet or whoever has been feeding you or pushing you to sleep with a minor in order for you to be prosperous. And you know, there are things that are still being discussed, but these laws are being, you know, there are bills that are proposing that, or you know, there are people who've been discussing this and lobbying. But what tends to happen is, okay, if we say today, Take Fizzo is holding a concert, 1 million people are going to go to your concert. But if we say we're having a discussion around child rights, around a bill that's going to change all of that, that will put in place legal mechanisms to fix that, guess how many people show up? 10, 5, if that.
4. Yeah. Like that, I'll look at it and say it's the ones who don't want to come are the ones who are doing it.
But there's too many people. But does that solve the problem? It doesn't. And it comes back to people having an appetite for things that matter. And I don't know what it's going to change, or what it's going to take to change paradigms, or how we can change them. But until we start looking out for things that matter, we can't just wait until the marriages bill, for example.
Yeah.
Child marriages are now outlawed. It is now, it's now something in law. So the Marriages Bill became the Marriages Act very recently, and we're celebrating that. But there's so many gaps, because maybe you and I, because maybe the people living in the communities facing the real issues are not coming forward. Lawmakers, we can't think for everyone.
True.
We can't, unfortunately. So it's an encouragement, even to you. Please go out there. The next time you have a concert, tell people to come and attend consultation meetings.
Yes, they need to for their own good after the party, obviously. All right. So, okay, real quick. Let's say you're at the helm of all lawmakers. Like, your signature will pass any law, no matter how ridiculous. You get me? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I like this. Yes.
Yeah. What laws would you put in to stop this?
Okay. First thing that I would do effectively is expand the definition of rape to also protect boys.
You heard that? I'll drink to that.
Thank you. I will too. These are yummy, by the way.
It's a fake drink.
That's the first thing. Because if we cannot provide them with the same protection, what are we doing? Very recently, the age of consent was, it was raised now to 18 and all of that. But I think a lot more needs to be done. We need all the laws that don't speak to that to just be chucked in the bin.
Yeah.
In the bin, effectively. The other really important thing that I would do, I think I would increase the sentencing for those who are for pedophiles. Mm-hmm. All of them, please. More harsher sentences, even life imprisonment. Some people
not even Sharia law. I've got the power.
Yes. Okay. So Sharia law, then chop them off.
There we go.
Effectively, castration, chop them off. Another thing that I would seriously consider and put in our laws is, I don't know, let's have a fund that will. We cannot have people being raped and abused for financial reasons. We have AIDS levy. Let's have a fund that goes out to assist any of these young girls who find themselves in this position. One more. Okay, what else would I do? You put me on the spot now. There's all these things that I think about and wish that I could effectively do, and now I have the opportunity. I'm drawing a blank. I would also have a register for all sexual offenders. I think this is important. People are committing crimes all over the place and then not even being checked, being employed and even working with children. So sex offenders register that allows you to register, declare to all your neighbors when you move in that you're a sex offender and that you cannot be within a certain distance of children. And I think this will be really important even for anyone who comes in contact with you should see that you're a sexual offender. Yeah.
I like the second law.
Yeah.
I like the second law. I like the first and second one. The register is cool, but the first two, I like them a lot. All right. Okay, so let's move from sexual abuse. Let's talk about physical abuse. And this, mainly happens between like the majority, like married couples and stuff. How does that go? How does that go legally? Because I like to know how it works. Like, okay, we got into a fight, someone gets beat up, and from there, what is this person? Because there are a lot of women who are getting beat up in their houses, but for fear of losing a man or being told to leave the house or whatever, or just trying to be a good wife, they just keep quiet. But they really need the help, and some of them don't even know how to get help. You know what I mean? Yeah. So from a legal perspective, right? How is a woman supposed to go about it? Yeah.
From a legal perspective, the first and most important thing is that assault is a criminal offense. Whether it's done by someone you know becomes another dimension to it, or by somebody you don't know, because a stranger can assault you somewhere. Maybe like in here, we're in a pub. You could be assaulted in a pub. You have recourse against that person, but all of these things are criminal offenses. So anything criminal requires that you report and break the silence. If you've been assaulted, please go and report. There's a scale of injuries. The injuries that you can see and injuries that are more grave. Also, the case will depend. Sometimes you could actually be in the hospital. Maybe you've been beaten up so badly, you require medical attention. You have to be in the hospital, and perhaps I have to look at that first. So sometimes people will look at getting treatment first before going to the police and so on. But please report. That's the first and most important thing. The police, despite what you might want to say, are very integral in the whole process. And any criminal proceedings, again, report. The victim-friendly unit also looks into cases of domestic violence. They will call in the perpetrator. The idea, again, because this is somebody that you know, this is somebody that you're living with, the proximity is like this. Let me say this in Shona, they're not there to put it in, and this is some of the reasons why people don't report. The first thing is they'll say, why are you doing that? Do you know that it's against the law to do that? Mavakuwaza, she wants to have you arrested. What is, so there's that process of a psychological intervention, of a counseling intervention to get to why this is happening. It doesn't mean that people are not being prosecuted and taken to court. Then you go to court, bail considerations are made. If you're granted bail, you are then supposed to then be coming to court on remand, or when you're remanded out of custody. But again, if it's the same household that you're living in,
that's my point. Like, so I'm trying to think about it. Like, remand. Okay, that's fine. Cool. Then they go to court. Guy gets bail. Where do you think guy is gonna go?
He has to go back to the same house. And I think,
how does that work? Like, I get it. I get the whole legal system and everything. That's dope, right? But then after the court, guy is coming back home. How are you? How are we, like, the reason why he was in court is because he's beating on me. Now we're together in the same house, space. Looking at each other.
But women are encouraged.
It's gonna happen, right?
True, yeah. So it's almost like, it's a powder keg just waiting to go boom.
So how do we fix that?
Protection orders are things that, it's a measure that a lot of women should look at, or anyone who's in a tricky domestic situation. The Domestic Violence Act was created for those situations. So the protection order is also called the peace-loving man's order, where we're saying, we just want to live together properly. All I'm doing is going to court and saying, you're not being peaceful. If you kick it up again, then I can use that order as a warrant for your arrest. I go to the police station, say, okay, I've got an order against this person. But you continue to beat on me, then that's a measure that you can use to protect yourself. So ultimately, the idea is for you to live in peace. But if you get to a point where it's untenable, then move out of that space.
And I think
move out of that space, get a divorce.
I think that's what many women, they think about the whole process, and then they realize the only way out is a divorce. And then they look at it like, this is my opinion, it's not facts, but then they look at it and say, you know what, maybe he will change. You know, and I think that's what's going on.
That's the reality.
That's what's going on right now.
For a lot of women, it's true. There are places, there are shelters where these women can go, particularly those who are in violently, physically abusive relationships. There are shelters. A lot of organizations do provide them. SASA, Zimbabwe Women Lawyers Association, will also provide legal assistance for you as well, and legal advice for you to go through the process. The one wonderful thing, or one of the wonderful things about being African, is that it's a village. Ubuntu.
Yes.
There's apana when you understand? So I think women must be brave enough. Don't stay in your situation because you want comfort. Don't stay in that situation because you want flamboyance.
So is it not shame then? Is it not shame which makes
shame is also another
these ladies stay in
yeah.
these terrible situations?
I believe it is a factor, but you don't have anything to be ashamed of. You have nothing to be ashamed of. To any woman listening who's being abused, please speak out. That's where it starts, and it's a whole village.
Yeah.
There's situations where maybe somebody's been going to report, but they keep going back, and then they're fatally then harmed, and then the next thing, tabudisa masofa panze. What are we saying?
Yeah, true. Okay, so let me ask a question. Like, let's say I get into a scuffle with a guy, right? And he reports it, right? And then I physically beat down on a woman, and she reports it. Is the crime the same?
I see what you're trying to get me to say.
I'm asking. Come now.
Okay. To answer your question first, maybe let me speak to the bias behind it. There seems to be a considered bias. And for a good reason.
Yeah.
You would find that when a woman comes forward and reports a case of physical violence, that perhaps that case is dealt with a little differently than if another man were to be involved in a brawl or whatever it was.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One is that women have been traditionally disenfranchised for so long. They are vulnerable. We are vulnerable.
Yes.
So we need more protection.
Yes.
The second reason is that when it's a domestic situation, the power dynamics, the situation at play is not an open and shut case.
Yeah.
So when a woman does come forward, it's supposed to be looked into. And a lot of the time, again, it's not to say that men are not also victims of domestic violence, but the majority of the statistics and what we know to be our running figures each year that are recorded from the police station, from our help centers, is that women are at the brunt of most violence. So because it's a prevalent problem, it has to be dealt with a little more force, with gusto. A little more urgency, with a little more gusto. But it's not to say that crimes against men don't matter. It's not to say that ordinary physical assault that's not in a domestic violence situation doesn't matter.
No, it makes sense. Because I wanted you to clarify that. Because for me, it wasn't going to sit well. You know what I mean? Like, I get the same charge for punching that guy and punching you. That didn't sit well with me at all. All right, that's good. All right, cool. So, what's your take on minors? I can't call it abuse because they're both minors, right? Right?
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Like, we're having this conversation on our way here, right? And like, how are 9-year-olds sexually active? Like, maybe I'm old school. It's still flying way over my head. I still can't grasp the fact that these kids are at this level, you know, and as parents, what are we doing about it? Because, you know, we might laugh and say, nah, that's not my child. Yeah, you're next in line, bro. You know what I mean? If it's happening to children, if you got a child, it's going to happen to your child. You know what I mean? No free lunches, you know?
Scary to think about,
Yeah.
but important to also consider. You know, a lot of the time you'd find that monitoring, perhaps, you know, turns out you're not monitoring what's happening. You need to be, you know, surveilling your children a little more. You need to be lieutenant commander in your household. Generally speaking, the age of criminal responsibility, this is when if a child commits a crime, at what stage can they be charged with that crime? At what stage can they actually also stand and appear? You know, there's a juvenile court as well that deals with juveniles. So in Zimbabwe, it was previously 7 years. That was the age of criminal responsibility, meaning that if a child above the age of 7 commits a crime, it is in the process of being raised, and the discussions, those public consultations I was talking about. There's a child justice bill and another bill that wants to raise this age of criminal responsibility to 12. Again, you'd find that the bracket, the 13-year-old falls outside of that bracket. The 17-year-olds previously spoken about in the other case where the beautiful young flower was abused, 17. So already they're on a scale where, criminally speaking, they should understand what they've done to have been a crime. But with sexual crimes, there's a grooming involved. You learn these things from an adult.
Yeah.
So how do you take one and then how do you prosecute the 13-year-old as an adult without looking behind the 13-year-old? Unfortunately, what will happen is that the boy is going to be arrested. He's going to be charged in juvenile court. They'll look at what has happened. Maybe if there are any factors that will aggravate it, then they'll look at it in that way. But the law is just handing out a hammer, and there's no psychological support. There's no proper understanding of the issues that go behind what is happening. And maybe because we're under-resourced. Maybe, but unfortunately, these are the things that are happening. So when children are indulging, when children can also be quite out there, and maybe they're doing it on their own. You don't know. Maybe they're experimenting, and just because hormones are running wilder, people are growing up faster. They're prepubescent, much younger now. Yeah. We now have pregnancies resulting. So generally speaking, the boy in that situation would be the one under more fire, because remember that the definition of rape provides only for a boy to rape a girl. Where they are younger and they're engaging, there are no Romeo and Juliet clauses. This means in other countries, in their laws, they'll say, okay, if you find maybe a 16-year-old getting it on with another 16-year-old or 15 and 15, they're children. It's what they do. Then let it be. There should be no criminal liability. We haven't gotten there yet. What often happens is that the boy will be held criminally responsible or criminally liable if anything comes up. There's another, I'm going to keep coming back to the bills that are being discussed right now and all the laws that, exciting, really important laws that are, in the process of being made. When that provision came about, we didn't think about a Romeo and Juliet clause. We simply said, let's raise the age of majority to 18. But again, it's another gap and an opportunity for us to sit down and fix that.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So it all, no matter what, 2 13-year-olds do what they do, right? No matter what, the boy is the one who's going to be under fire.
Because what will then happen again is, we'll come back to our Africanness. The girl in her household. So no one's okay, Tase, you did what? Okay, with who? Where is that boy? Let's call his parents, and then we're going to the police. And then it becomes a weaponizing of it. So, and what are the police supposed to do? My Sorobi's in the police station going ham. What do you do?
Arrest.
So you have to arrest. And then now it's also because of the pressure. There are a lot of people who are being arrested or because of the public pressure, investigations are not being done thoroughly. And ultimately, the criminal justice system is not working as well as it should be.
This is ridiculous. We need to find a solution.
We do. We do.
Interestingly,
there's a lady in Bulawayo who was okay. So she thought that she could use the court to fight her own battles. She thought she could use the court to settle a score with her husband, who she wasn't getting along with. She leveled false allegations against him. So he went to court, and then it was discovered at that stage that she was lying. And then she was then brought before the court for making a false police report and for false allegations. And she was effectively sentenced for 12 months. So she's answering for her crime. There's another case, again in the Matabeleland region, where a mother had coached her young daughter to basically make up false allegations that she had been raped. Again, it came out that these were things that were done under the insistence of another person, and she was then tried and jailed for making these false allegations.
Oh, so people actually do go to jail for these things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
word on the street says that if you get accused, it's done. You're gone. Whether it's true or not, it's gone. It's actually very refreshing to know that people can actually go down for falsely accusing. So my brothers, if you're innocent, you're innocent. Stick to your guns. All right, with that, we don't have much time. Rumbi, I'd like to thank you so much for coming through to the Pubcast with your fake drink. But yo, it's the Pubcast. My name is Take This or Catch Me, and whoever sitting next to me next week.
This episode of the Pubcast was brought to you by the Southern African Parliamentary Support Trust.